Hi, my name is Dr. Rayshawn Ray, speaking truth to power, and this is my daily thought. I want to give a sociological analysis of Jordan Peele's Us, the movie that came out making tons of headways, the sequel to Get Out. I want to give you 10 main points that relate to sociological theories and broadly in terms of how we think about race and poverty and social class inequality in America. Point one. Tethers. How do we think about tethers? The people that were living underground. Well, from a definition standpoint, tethers is oftentimes used as a rope or chain to restrict movement, oftentimes restricting animal movement or other fixed objects. So we can think about a dog being attached to something, and in this case, we can have individuals actually being attached to other individuals. Part of what makes a tether interesting is that it oftentimes makes a copy of the body to control those above as puppets because of the soul link. So part of what the tether was in the movie Us was actually the soul. The only reason as to why those two individuals, one above ground and one below ground, couldn't necessarily just be individuals, had a lot to do with the fact that we couldn't replicate the soul. And I think that's one of the things that Jordan Peele was getting at, that morally, we can never replicate the soul. We can replicate body parts. We can replicate various aspects of people's lives, but we can't replicate the soul. That's something that can't necessarily be done. The other thing that was interesting about the tether is that the tether didn't have direction or control, was actually lost without the other part, that link, that soul link that was linking to the person above ground, kind of guiding their movements. If you noticed it throughout the movie, they were kind of moving around, looking all weird and doing different things. But really what that was about is the fact that they couldn't exactly see what they were doing. So they were going through the movement without necessarily doing it. And that's part of the interesting link that I think Jordan Peele was trying to make with social media today and technology. But before I mention that, one of the other interesting things about the tethers is that they were forced to eat rabbit and did all kind of things with the rabbit. I mean, it was similar to the way that African Americans and African slaves used the pig to create chitlins and all sort of other things. But as it relates to the tether is also referred to in digital technology to use an electronic device to enable a wireless internet connection. So you might have a phone, and then all of a sudden you use your hotspot on your phone to connect to your laptop. That's another way of thinking about a tether. So a person might say, I have to tether my phone to my laptop. So it's pretty interesting when we think about digital technology and the point that that Jordan Peele was trying to make. Second point, Jeremiah 11:11. What was the significance of that? I mean, that's one of my boys' names. And when we look at the New International Version, what it says is, therefore, this is what the Lord says, I will bring on them a disaster they cannot escape. Although they cry out to me, I will not listen to them. What's interesting is that God brought us together that night because of the rain. That was what the tether actually said. So God made a natural event turn into an event for change, similar to, we could think about Noah's Ark. But you've seen that person just sitting out on the beach, standing there, hands out, waiting on people to come and connect with that person, similar to how we think about the tether. So part of what that's getting at is more broadly in society. I mean, what we've been seeing is just what people perceive to be massive chaos. I mean, obviously, it's similar to the 1960s. It's similar to when slavery ended during the Civil War, and we are in another moment in time at that, when we are in the middle of a social movement, and people are trying to make sense of things. So part of, I think, what Jordan Peele is getting at is the fact that these sort of things are being sparked because people are supposed to make changes in their lives, and that's something that we really have to think through. Third thing is the macro and micro level link. Part of when we think about macro, this is structural, things that people can't always see but experience and are impacted by. And then on a micro level, how do we think about our own selves, our own individuality? On a macro level, the next point is that systems control people. Systems control people. So what we've seen in the movie is that the system, whether or not people were above or below ground, were being controlled by the system. And resources like water that are supposed to heal us actually hurt us. Of course, I think this was a reference to Flint, Michigan, and what's happening with the water there. So it's interesting how being part of a system, people who are part of the system who are overground, whether it be references to movies, say like The Matrix, don't even realize that we are part of the system, that we are being controlled by the system, which leads to the next point, that the underground was created by America. The underground was created by America. All of the ways that the tethers were moving about in the underground. And I think that references actually Harriet Tubman from the Underground Railroad and the fact that the doppelganger ended up coming above ground as a child and taking over. And I think part of this is the point is that Then the person was put below ground, the actual person who was above ground originally, the child who was taken and exchanged lives, to actually mobilize the marginalized. I think that's what becomes key. Similar to Harriet Tubman in the ways that she had to mobilize the marginalized. And I think we're continuing to see that today in ways that social media is used for negative things. But part of the research I've done with some of my colleagues shows that social media is actually used to mobilize and connect people. Next thing, part of this mobilization was the Hands Across America shirt that showed her how to mobilize. What's interesting there is that the Tethers didn't have a whole lot of information, actual visual content of what was happening above ground until they got that shirt. So that shirt, just that simple symbolism, something as simple as a shirt or a hat can be used to mobilize people. And I think that's what becomes key. And they also had years to kind of plan that out. And it's amazing what people can do when they actually bond together, whether for good or for bad. People have different interpretations about what's good or bad, but overall what we know is that people are able to mobilize. Now, the next part on a micro level is children losing their voice and conscious mind to the system that takes away their innocence too soon. That's what I thought about the young girl when she, because of this natural disaster, because of rain, got put into this space to be captured. Part of this is that children's innocence gets taken away too soon. And I think part of this from an unconscious level is the fact that our unconscious mind is 30,000 times more powerful than our conscious mind. 30,000 times more powerful. So what this means is that our unconscious mind controls a whole lot of what we actually do. Things that matter, our habits, our reactions, our unconscious thoughts, all things that we think that we control, we actually don't. So part of this, what becomes interesting here, is that potentially what Jordan Peele was getting at is that the tethers in the system is what's actually controlling us. And part of this, the next point, is that everyone has two sides to them. You know, Irving Goffman, sociologist, talks about impression management and what we call presentation of self, or a looking glass self, the ability for people to view and look at themselves. And oftentimes what we do is we engage in a front stage and a backstage. We have the front that we want to present, oftentimes through social media, other things, and then we have the backstage that we don't want people to see. So all those mirrors in that space, I think, was really representing that. The white woman character who had the makeup on and clothes that she never had on when a doppelganger came up, and then the doppelganger started to hurt herself. Why? Because when she was underground, that is the movement that from her soul link, she's seen the character above ground doing. And what she seen was that character was actually hurting herself to be what she thought was being beautiful. But what's interesting about that is when the doppelganger did it, she was literally hurting herself. Blood was coming out, and people were like, why would she hurt herself? Well, that's part of what people do every day through plastic surgery and other sort of things. 8th point, police never showed up. I mean, it speaks to examples of when marginalized communities really need the police or public safety, and they don't come or they don't respond soon enough. And part of it is benign neglect. The other part is being under-resourced. And so, you know, it was interesting how we seen those kind of patterns play out. The other part, Red knew where the key was when she came back to the house because she had previously lived there. So that was another point. And then us, the whole word of us versus them, the word us was so deep because of the link, the dehumanization, how we think about immigrants and refugees, and the quotes that were made in the movie. What are you people? We are Americans. We are humans too. I mean, this really speaks to the immigration debate and the way that people are framed. And part of this is that the untethered must mobilize and join together in order to be untethered. And so tether is the worst of ourselves that we try to keep caged up. But social media and the current political system and current political cycle oftentimes unearths or untethers ourselves. And so it's interesting that we can kind of go through and think about all these things. Then there were a series of other extras that become important. I mean, like when the mom killed one of the twins, she grunted in her native language. She did it again. Part of it, the main character knew how to get to the underground because she had been there before. One of the other characters actually didn't kill her because she was wanting the mom tether, the tether who actually got put underneath the ground, to actually do that particular act. It was difficult for the tether to talk because it wasn't her native language. And then, of course, at the end of the movie, the boy actually didn't want to hug his mom because he realized that his mom was probably not a good person. So as always, look, conversations matter like Black Lives and books, and I hope this has sparked one.